Okay, so what you're trying to find is y equals cosine of arc cosine of x, and you have to list the domain range and any asymptotes. I'm going to underline any, because there might not be an asymptote. Okay, so first what you would want to do is first graph y equals cosine, regular cosine, of x. And so the amplitude would be 1, because 1, and then the period would be just 2 pi, because when you do 2 pi divided by 1, it's 2 pi. So you first do the x and y table. And then you plug it in, and when you plug it in, you get cosine of pi over 2 is 1, cosine of pi is 0, cosine of 3 pi over 2 is negative 1, and cosine of 2 pi is, cosine of, forgot to put 0. There. And then you'd graph that. So then you'd start at 0 and 1. Then you go to pi over 2 is 0. Then pi negative 1. Then here, and then here. And since we're trying to graph arc cosine, you want to restrict the graph so that it's a 1-to-1 function. So you want to restrict it at 0 and pi, and you just erase this part off. And then to make it an arc cosine, you'd want to switch these two so that it looks like 0 pi over 2 pi 3 pi over 2 and then 2 pi. And then you'd also switch the y-axis, the y to x, so then it'd be 1, 0, negative 1, 0, and 1. And so, because you restricted the domain at pi, these would not be included. And so when you graph that, you get that graph. And since when you restrict the graph, you don't put an asymptote there, there wouldn't be any asymptotes. So the asymptote, there wouldn't be any. And the domain of this function is negative 1 less than or equal to x, and x less than or equal to 1. Then the range would be 0, and that's it.